So this is Brian Cohen from SFP Advisors, and today I am lucky and blessed to have a prior client, Gary Jackson of Jackson Comfort Services, on with me today. So a couple quick things, which I think is interesting. Gary comes from a family business. He worked with his dad and his brother. The family business was started in the 1940s, right? And then it went on for a number of years. There was a break for one reason or another, and your dad and brother restarted this about 1975. So they had about a 4 to 5 year window or runway before you got involved and you graduated college in 1979, and then you joined up with the two of them to go ahead and grow the business. I mean, to put it in perspective for you, that's 1979. Let's round it up and call it 1980 for you keeping score at home. 43 years later, in 2023, we handled the transaction for you
Yep.
successfully. And by the way, in an odd year, nonetheless, 2023 was. So I guess coming out of the chute, and we have plenty of conversations. It ain't easy to work with family. So how did you make a decision coming out of college to say, hey, that's my brother, that's my dad, that looks like a good move?
Um, Kind of happened accidentally. My dad asked if I'd help out for a summer, kind of organize some accounting, maybe do something to help things grow because it was just my dad, my brother, and one other guy at that point. So my thought was to help out for a summer and then move to Colorado and make a living in the ski industry.
Sure. Ski bump.
Um,
I can appreciate that. I
yeah,
love
so we did a little marketing, Valpak, if anybody remembers that.
it. Oh yeah.
Made the phone ring, hired a couple people, and it turned into a career.
So how long after you started, I was just it was a let's have some fun for the summer and help out the family. How long into it did you realize, wow, I think we got something bigger here that we could really grow with?
Um, Pretty quick. I mean, during that summer, it was pretty obvious that there was a market for what we did. And my dad, my brother, and the guy that they had hired were all pretty good at what they were doing. So it just made sense to grow it.
So you started, so we'll call it your dad, your brother, and yourself. We'll call it three people for starters. At your height, do you remember how many employees you had?
Um, Pre-sale, it was probably in the 80s.
Okay. Right. Sizable.
Yep.
Sizable. So from 3 to 80, and again, I think what's most unique is, and we see it over the internet all the time. Everybody wants to be a $10 million company yesterday, right? How
Mhm.
quickly can we get there? We got to scale, we got to grow. I mean, you had consistent growth over a 40-year period. It's not like, I mean, I'm sure there were some breaks to the upside, some things that broke to the downside. But overall, when you take a look at basically a 43, 44 year call from 79 to 2023 case study, case history. I mean, that's pretty impressive. How your brother is older. What was your business and personal relationship like?
Good. Yeah, he's 2 years older than I am. He's a mechanical genius. He can fix anything. Just happened to focus on HVAC, but he could have done anything. Um, so he was out in the field all the time, fixing things and taking care of customers, and I was organizing internally, getting an accounting structure put in place, doing some marketing. So it was a good relationship.
And you now, I mean, coming in as a numbers guy, is it crazy? I mean, we talk to owners now that don't understand the importance still of their numbers. I mean, you were on that side of the business.
Yep.
How important are your numbers in driving the growth of your business, making business decisions, making determination on where you want the business to go in the future? I mean, when you take a look from a big picture, I mean, by the way, fixing everything in the one side of the business, right? The technical part, incredibly important. That is the business. But man,
Yep.
you have got to have a good understanding of your numbers, and I know that you did.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't understand financial statements and departmentalize things so you know where the revenue is, where the profits are, um, what the expenses look like. It's critical. I don't know how you make decisions or grow the business effectively without really understanding the numbers.
And I agree with you there. And when I have conversations with owners, think about your business. When you were at $5 million, there's a certain set of decisions that are made versus when you're at 10 or more. There's a whole different set of decisions that are being made. And somewhere along the road, right, as you start to get towards that $7 million mark, you've got to have some additional management in place to be able to handle some things so that you can continue to work on the business and not necessarily in the business. And there's a disconnect there sometimes in bringing those people in, that at least that we see. They don't want to do it until they have to do it. And at that point in time, it's almost too late. So how did you guys manage growth over that time frame?
Not always as well as we should have. I mean, we ran into that situation exactly. It's like, do you hire somebody to run the service department and pay them a lot of money, or we just keep doing it ourselves and save that expense? And we made some mistakes for sure. I remember fairly early on, we had a service tech that said, "You need to let me be service manager and run this department effectively," because I was doing that plus a number of other things. And it was a mistake. I should have let him do it. And I didn't, and he left, and that set us back. So, yeah, we made a lot of those mistakes where we should have gotten more leadership in place before we did. But it's a learning experience. Just because you know the numbers doesn't mean you understand everything
Agree.
about running the business.
And at the time that you were growing the business, by the way, it's not like you had access to Facebook and 25 different coaching groups and all these peer groups to be able to ask all these
No,
questions of to see what's going on. I mean, I see it. We have conversations. Owners like, hey, what do you think about this? I just saw this on Facebook. Somebody posted this about marketing or finance or whatever it is. So you had to rely on your gut more than probably most folks ever have had to.
yeah, and the information available today is like light years compared to what it was then. We did get involved with an ACCA mixed group. We were one of the founding members of a mixed group in 1988, which definitely helped. I mean, that gave us different perspectives and got to talk to different owners, but most of them had the same issues we did. So it wasn't like
Right.
there was somebody in there that could just give you the answers, kind of work through it together. But that was very helpful. And that group still exists and we're still active in it.
It's probably funny what you said. I would probably safe to say that the challenges you had over those years are probably the same challenges everybody else has still today. There are just certain things that, man, you just got to muscle through. There's nothing
Yeah.
you can do about, right? It's hard to hire people, because you get nervous that you made the wrong decision with somebody that you've committed to, right? Hard to fire somebody. My God, we put all this time, effort, and energy into this person. And man, they're so close to turning a corner, and I don't want to look like a failure that I made a bad hire. What am I going to do here? It's and hiring and firing are keys to being able to grow businesses successfully, is knowing, what that term I think is, but slow to hire, quick to fire.
Yep.
I think that's
Yeah.
the statement.
Hiring
Again,
the right people is critical. And we made that mistake too. I hired the wrong service manager once, and that also set us back. So we became much better in the hiring process. And that's probably as critical as anything. If you hire the right people, that's going to take care of a lot of problems.
it's a learning experience though,
It
right?
is for sure.
Fail forward fast. You can't beat yourself up over the mistakes. By the way, you want to make the mistakes. That's where the growth is, and that's how you wind up learning. To our point that we were making from before, obviously 20, 30 years ago in the business, much different than now. I'm not saying you're not going to make mistakes. At the end of the day, sometimes everybody makes mistakes making decisions, but there's just so much information available. There's some mistakes you just don't have to make. The information's out there. Don't work with this company, work with this company, have your financial house in order, make sure you get good, part of good coaching group, understand
Yep.
what you're good at, what you're bad at, make sure to be able to hire to offset what you're bad at. I mean, like there's certain principles to be able to do it, which just weren't available from before. How long did your dad work with you guys in the business for?
Uh, Quite a while, actually. His role changed. He kind of became more of an ambassador for the company in the community. He was pretty well known, very involved in Rotary, YMCA, a number of other community organizations. So he kind of became the face of the company and in the community. But he remained active. He just passed away in 2022,
Sorry.
and
Mhm.
he was active up until probably 10 years prior to that. Uh,
It's it's
he
it's
just likes people and liked to hang around with people and go out and see people. So it was fun for him.
listen, there's a number of transactions we've handled where there've been multiple brothers involved, family involved. Brings me to mind is like Lou Habaika with his family. His two brothers that they bought the business from his dad. The three of them grew the business. We just completed a transaction for My Plumber with Mark Presgrave. Mark and his dad Wendell worked together for decades. And Mark had a couple key people on the leadership team that were basically like family to Wendell. That transaction we just closed on that a couple weeks ago. So it's neat to hear those stories where the family gets to be together, like that. I'm
Mhm.
sure there were some battles. There had to have been
Yep.
some battles, right? Fun ones.
Well, to complicate it more, my wife and my brother's wife also worked on the company. So we had lots of family.
Right. 24/7, everybody's around each other. So there's no reason
Pretty
to
much.
take
Yep.
vacation when we're together Monday through Friday. So as we get past COVID at 20, 21, 22, there was some inkling that you guys said, hey, maybe it's time for us to either slow down, take some chips off the table. What were those conversations like between you yourself? Obviously, unfortunately, your dad passed away in 2022. I don't know how involved he was in those conversations, but you and your brother were the driving force, I'm sure, by that point in time. What did
Yeah,
those
at that point,
conversations look like when you
Mark
were
and I were owners. So, it was our decision at that point.
okay? So what did the two of you sit down and say, hey, let's explore what this looks like? What did those conversations look like?
Um, so it was me and my brother Mark and my wife Fonda and Mark's wife Pat were all involved, um, and our nephew Doug. He was general manager at that point and was doing a lot of good things and was committed to the business. So he was also part of the conversations. Um, and part of it was we're trying to figure out a way that Doug could just buy the business from us. But we found out pretty quickly that that just wasn't going to be practical at the way the market was at that point and his resources. And um, we figured out pretty quickly that wasn't going to be possible. But Mark and I were mid 60s, so it was time to us to think about exit planning and the private equity market. After looking at all the different options, just seemed to make the most sense.
And now you're yeah, and I remember having conversations with Doug, and then I remember having conversations obviously with you and your brother, and a number of calls where everybody was involved. You're a number of years post transaction now, right? Where we're going to call it
Hmm.
about two plus. I know you stayed part of the business for a period of time after that. Now you're kind of retired, almost in a sense from what we talked about from before. It sounds like what you're doing, what your dad was doing, is almost being like an ambassador.
Yeah, somewhat. I think less than he did
Okay,
because I've got a couple of kids in Colorado that we spend a lot of time with.
sure.
So that's a little different.
And post trans, and one of the questions I get asked all the time. Oh, we got a partner. I now have a boss I have to answer to. They're going to tell me what to do. I've never had to do anything like that. Can you talk to any of that, what it looked like post transaction?
Sure. So I mentioned that Doug was GM prior to selling, and he remains GM. So now he reports to somebody different than me and Mark, but I mean, he always had to, communicate with us and work with us, and it was kind of team decisions. And that's really still the case. It's just a different entity. And they pretty much leave us alone to do business the way we always have. And as long as we're successful, they're happy. So it really hasn't been a dramatic change for 99% of the people here. It's a little different for Doug, dealing with, that corporate level. But most people here don't even notice the difference.
I'm happy you said that. And for Doug, I mean, he's playing on a different level now, right? A different
Yeah.
level of business sophistication. The quote unquote free education he's getting now. I don't know how you even go ahead and explain that, but you're right. And when folks ask me, oh, what's it going to look like? Listen, if somebody's giving you a check for a lot of money, they're going to want to know what's going on with the business. They're not
Yeah.
buying the business for the most part, by the way. They're not buying the business to go run it. They're buying it to partner with you for growth. And if you work that relationship properly, right, you start to take a look as a team. What are your shortcomings and what holes could they plug? Sometimes it's equipment cost reductions, right?
Yeah.
Hey, all right, we need to do budgeting and planning a little bit differently. Great, we're going to learn some good stuff here. Sometimes it's, hey, we're not great at hiring and we can't recruit the way that we'd like to, but we know if we could grow a lot faster. Wonderful. Does your partner, this PE group, do they have the ability to go ahead and do the things that you need to have done? So some of the conversations we have, and we had it, and we have it pretty often is, hey, if you need to double the business in the next 2 years, what does that look like? What do you have to have in place? Okay, well, what's holding you back from getting there? And we get the list A, B, and C. Now you kind of know what you need out of a partner to help you get, from one point over to the next. And by the way, these private equity companies, they want you to grow and they want to help you. You got to let them know what's going on. But to your point, and I've heard this time and time again, if you're doing the things that you're supposed to do, they're there just wanting to know what's going on. It's almost like a check-in. I'm sure the conversation is a little bit more deeper with Doug, but for the most part, what did you have, like couple meetings a month with everybody?
With Doug, it's weekly.
Right.
Um, with the rest of us, there really wasn't anything. They just dealt directly with Doug because he was general manager and he filtered everything back to us. But communication's a two-way street.
Sure.
There's things that they brought to the table for us, and there's things that we were doing that they were able to implement and move throughout their organization. So it was mutually beneficial. And
Yeah.
they told us what their expectations were going in, and we're able to meet those. So everybody's happy so far.
And that's the most important thing is getting a good deal for you, right? You get one opportunity to make this transaction happen. So
Right.
let's see what the maximum amount of money is going to wind up being. Let's get that set first. Then let's take a look at what all those potential, the chemistry fit within the relationships between you and all these buyers look like. And where does it balance out at? Is it, hey, max money versus maybe not the best relationship, or is it best relationship versus maybe an offer that's a touch lower? In best case scenario, it's top money versus top chemistry fit. Doesn't always work that way, right? Probably about a third of the transactions we do don't necessarily go to the highest bidder. They just think there's a chemistry fit different with a
Mhm.
different PE partner than the one who's offering the most amount of money. But come again, everybody has their different goals on what they want to get accomplished coming out of this. You guys ran a very successful business for decades for the most part. You weren't desperate to go ahead and make a deal happen. The deal had to be right on the terms that you needed to have, for what was your definition, of success. And to that end, here you are a couple years later, still have your hair, still doing your thing.
Yep. Yeah. I got no complaints. It's been great. But
Yeah.
going in, I think the cultural aspect for us was probably more important than the dollars. We probably would have given up a few dollars to get the right fit. I think in the end, it wound up being both. I
Right.
think we actually got the best culture, the culture we were looking for, and the best money. So I don't know that it always turns out that way, but it did for us, I think.
And I think to your point, which is the underlying piece here, is that you had multiple offers, multiple options for what you guys wanted to do with your next step. And one of the big mistakes, and I talk about this all the time, is I talk to owners. Hey, I got this great offer. I really like these guys. They're great. I'm like, well, if you really like them and they're that great, let's make sure that they really like you and that they think you're that great too, by making sure the offer they're putting in front of you is the max deal.
Mhm.
Because sometimes, my God, we talked to somebody the other week and they got a $15 million offer in front of them. And, we're thinking this business is something that could go for between 18 and 19, and I said to the owner, I said, that's $3.5 million in front of you. He goes, oh, I really like these guys. I said, okay. So why don't you call your wife and see if she thinks that relationship's worth $3.5 million? And
There
it got
might be,
very,
yeah,
it got
because there
very
might be somebody else out there you like too.
Of course. Well, a couple reasons. One, you want to see what the other relationships could look like. That's number one. Number two, let's see what the real dollars are. So if this group loves, quote unquote, we're hypothetically speaking, likes you as much as you think that they like you, then they'd be more than happy to pay what the fair market value of the business is going to be. They're going
Right.
to the top end of the market. And if they do that, absolutely do business with them. But let's make sure that they have the ability to go ahead and do that. So a lot of times what happens with this PE groups, and we're grateful it didn't happen with you. You get a phone call, this relationship gets developed. We love these guys. We love this. We love that. The owner doesn't even know what the potential money could be. They hand everything to the buyer, to the private equity partner and say, tell us what our business is worth. I mean, are you going over and let somebody scratch your belly right out of the gate? I mean, you're talking about eight figures at this point in time. This isn't chump change. You know, you
No, it's you get one opportunity to get it right.
it
So
is significant. It
and
could be significant.
and that's why it really helped working with you guys, just to start with narrowing it down to a group of companies that we thought would fit culturally. And we're at least in the ballpark of the dollars we were talking about. Because I was getting emails 2, 3 times a week from, private equity looking to talk to us, and there's no way that I could weed through all that and, narrow it down to the right people. So you guys just doing that and then bringing them in for an interview and being able to talk to them in person to narrow it down further, that was extremely helpful.
And negotiating, and knowing what the most important things are for you to be able to negotiate these, within the LOI and the purchase agreements and everything else that has
Yep.
to happen. I think what happens is folks get an idea what they think their business is worth, and they think this is like a real estate transaction. And nothing could be further from the truth. You know, one of the,
Yeah, it's a
oh,
lot about personalities and how you're going to get along. And when
sure.
we narrowed it down to the final two, we went and visited both, and to see what they were like in person, and that was really what made the decision. In
Yeah, you
fact, I
guys
think we went,
put your time
had we
into it.
not done that, I think we would have gone a different direction. And I'm glad we went the direction we did.
Agreed. Yeah, you were very thorough in what you wanted to have with your next step with your partner. Um, and it's important. I mean, I know plenty of folks. I actually have friends in the business. Right? I've been in this now 10 plus years, and I've got some calls. I became friends with them after their transaction. They said, "We wish we would have found you from before. Here's what happened in our transaction. What can you do?" I'm like, "Well, did you sign it?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, there's nothing I can do." So
Yeah,
own your shitty mistake, figure out, how to move forward with it. I don't know what else to tell you, but it always surprises me that these sophisticated owners that have these businesses throwing off 8 figures a year, right, in revenue, and again, not taking the next steps to figure out what's going to look best for their transaction. I got one other quick example for you. I was up in the Northeast for a cousin's graduation, and got people up there, got together with a couple of them, say, hey, and we were having something similar conversation like this. And I said, okay, let me ask you guys a question. Let's say you found an amazing house that you loved, and they're having an open house. You think you're going to get a deal on that house when they got 50 people being paraded through this magnificent home on a Saturday and Sunday? You think you're going to be able to pull the owner aside and get a one-off deal and get some steel on this house? And they all laughed. They said no. I said, but if your friend calls you from down the street and says, hey, my neighbor might be selling their house, you want to give them a call. You think you're getting a deal in that situation on a one-off sale? Yes. How many of those one-off sales do you want to be able to do when it comes to real estate? You'd love to do them all the time. Why? No competitive bidding process, right? Little walled off thing. Hey, let's see if we like each other and make a deal happen. Okay. You're not bringing
mhm,
all the big guns in place, the lawyers, the attorneys, the accountants, all the other stuff. We're just making a side deal happen. Buyers love to do that. Well, if you would love to do that on real estate and a buyer is trying to do that to you, do you start to see where the problem is? Right? You need to have multiple offers on your business to understand that you're getting the best deal. You get one time to do this. And
yep,
if you leave one, two, three, $4 million on the table by the rule of 72, let's pretend you're getting, give me a number, 7% per year, 8%, 10% per year. Every 6, 7 years, that extra money doubles. So if it was 3 million, call it every 7 years, three becomes six, six becomes 12, 12 becomes 24. You realize by the time kids start grade school to the time they get out, that 3 million could become 12 or 24 million bucks. That's crazy. You're leaving that on the table. I don't know how you would work as many years as you would to leave money on the table. Nobody does that. We all get mad, by the way. Are you a sports guy, Gary?
yeah,
Right. So, you look at these contracts that these guys get, right? That second NFL contract, which is that biggie where the quarterbacks are getting $200-300 million a year.
yeah, it's crazy.
Let me ask you, if you were in that same similar situation, wouldn't you be getting a max contract?
Sure.
Right. You don't know how long your career is going to last. You get one time to be able to go ahead and do this. So, to that, I think we're on the same page. Um, as we start to pull this in for a wrap here, what guidance or advice would you give to anybody that's contemplating looking at a transaction, thinking about a transaction, anything along those lines?
I would definitely work with a broker to help find the right mix or the right match. Um, and then it wasn't just choosing the company, it was also going through the process of, providing the right information, asking the right questions, going through the due diligence. Darcy, by the way, is a great guy. I spent a lot of time with him.
Love him. Yep.
Yeah, to try and do it on your own would just be very difficult and probably make some mistakes that are going to cost in the long run. And you probably won't get the best offer you could have gotten anyway.
Agreed. There's a saying, right? If you shortcut the process, you shortcut the results.
Yeah,
This is a process. I don't know how I slice and dice it. It's going to take 4 to 6 months, maybe a couple months longer, maybe a couple months shorter, depending.
yeah, it's definitely a process.
It's a process. And if you think that you can do it more quickly, the only thing that will happen is you will get less money.
And really think through your priorities going in, what's important to you, what you really want to accomplish. Um, and the final offer is not really the final offer. We found that out a couple times.
So, so now you're a couple years post-transaction. Okay. What does life look like?
It's great. Less stress, more time with the family. I got a group of friends. Play soccer a couple times a week. We go biking and hiking and tennis and just enjoy spending time with my wife out in the yard, gardening, just every day Saturday. So it's kind of nice.
I love that. I love that. And so for everybody listening, we've known Gary and the family now for a number of years. I will put Gary's new email address in this as well. And if you want to shoot Gary an email and say, hey, I'd love to have a question. I've got some questions about this. I heard what you said. I align. I feel the same way, but I'm confused or concerned about A, B, or C. You can reach out to Gary. Gary would be more than happy to have a conversation with you, answer any questions. He happens to be a
Yeah,
great guy.
definitely would be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. As we conclude and wrap up, is there any last things that you would like to say or share um, with anybody listening?
If you haven't started thinking about an exit strategy, don't wait, because the sooner you prepare your business for a sale, the better. And if you prepare for a sale to build the value, if you don't sell right away, doesn't matter. At least your company is more valuable and you're probably making more money. So do the things you need to do to make it valuable now, and it's going to pay off either way.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Gary, thank you very much for being part of this with us today. Please give all my best to your family for us. It was great seeing you again.
All right, thanks, Brian.